How's everybody doing today? Might need to unmute yourself. I muted you. I apologize. Everybody good out there? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, and everybody got the book, correct? Does everybody have access to your textbook, first of all?
Yes.
Fantastic. And please stay along with me. Particularly early in the course, we're going to go at a pretty relaxed pace. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, Jasmine, to get well ahead of me. Bear in mind, Sarai, as we go through the class, don't pay attention to where I'm at in lecture. Don't pay attention to where I'm at in lecture. Pay attention to your syllabus and where you should be there. So whatever dates it says in your syllabus and what you're supposed to be reading for this week, make sure that you're on schedule with that. I'll get a little bit behind Nashia, but best believe I'll get caught up. And Ms. Hicks, I promise you we're going to find a solution with this 1 o'clock thing. I know this hasn't been working for you as well. So I promise that I'll have this all worked out for you soon in a way that gets you all caught up to speed. And any other students that might be a little bit behind as well. We can begin to schedule some one-on-one meetings. I want to go back into the lecture that we had left off with on Friday. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can.
Outstanding. And as always, make sure that you're taking notes. And taking notes, Jasmine, does not mean just copying down what you see on this PowerPoint or writing down what I say word for word. An important part of taking notes is ensuring that the information makes sense to you. So make sure that you're able to paraphrase this in a way where obviously you can familiarize yourself with it in preparing for the exam and the first writing assignment, but more than anything else that you understand it for yourself. So again, it's a systematic study of human society and social interactions is what we mean by sociology. We talked about a society is a large social grouping that shares the same geographical territory and is subject to the same political authority and dominant cultural expectations. We struggled with this a little bit on Friday. Does anybody recall again, what are some examples of societies? What are some examples of societies? Large social grouping, same geographical territory. That's a key point there, geographical territory. So what are some examples of societies?
The United States.
Excellent, Soraya. So United States, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, Nigeria, Mozambique, Peru, these are all different societies across the world. And again, these are the kind of things you want to be putting in your notes, Soraya. So it's understandable if you forget some things, but make sure that you take good, careful notes so that you can retain this information pretty effectively for any pop quizzes that might be coming up. So when we talk about social science research, right, and we began talking on Friday, about how research is how we learn about the world. So we started off giving you some sample survey questions. And as Soraya had spoke to on Friday, a large purpose of that is to try and gain information about different groups, to try and find out how to serve those groups, or if certain things are working or not working. And there's no discipline, again, right? Many of your majors will be reflected here in this chart. So in health and human services, to do counseling, to do social work, social science research is critically important. This is true in business. So let's start here, right? Again, so even with you all being social science students, my hope would be that you start your own business. If you wanted to start your own business, how could research help you to kind of get your business off the ground running? How would you utilize scientific research to try and help your business? How would you use scientific research? Nashia, what do you think? Again, don't worry about whether or not you're right or wrong. The main thing I'm interested in during most of our class lecture is your thinking process. So how would you use research if you wanted to start a business? How would you use scientific research to kind of make that business a bit stronger? Nashia Hicks. How about you, Jasmine? How would you use scientific research to try and make a business stronger?
I'm not sure.
Think about it. I know you're not sure, but give me some educated guesses. Because I don't know, it's not an acceptable answer in this class. We got to at least try. And then if you try, I can build off of your knowledge and understanding from there, but I need you to try and tell me something. So if you had to start a business, how do you think that research could help you? Research, again, just finding out facts and that, can help you guide the business.
You can like see how other people started.
Good. What else? Again, don't worry about being wrong, but you got to get into the habit of thinking these things out. It's easy here during our lecture. It's going to be a little bit more challenging when you get your writing assignments and you get your midterm exam and stuff. So I want us to get into the habit of doing this now. Education sometimes is too much based upon rote memorization, where you just memorize some terms and spit them back to the professor without really learning. That's not the structure of this class. Like, I need real thought, to engage these concepts. So, Ryan, how do you think that you might use research if you wanted to start your own business?
I would probably research some of the most common or greatest mistakes people make when building a business, so that you can be proactive and make sure that you don't make those mistakes, so you can ensure that it'll be successful.
Outstanding. One of the main purposes of research is to not make the same mistakes twice. That if somebody has already done research and shows that like smoking too much tobacco can be harmful to your physical health, why do I need to go through that experiment again? People are still people, so they may make mistakes, but it's important that people have this information. And as a result, Soraya, a lot less people smoke cigarettes today than they did in the 1980s, 70s, and 60s, because we have more information available about the harms that cigarettes can do. So if you know that you wanted to set up a tech business in a senior citizen like center, that might be beneficial for you to save yourself some time and money. What are some other things we could learn if we wanted to start our own business? What are some other things that we might research?
How the people in the area of the business you're looking at, how would they how would they like your business? Excellent.
Who's that?
Maisha.
Very good, Maisha. So again, right, so do you all know why? So we live in a very very segregated society in spite of legalized segregation ending like in the 1960s. This makes it where so do any of you either live in or have you visited a predominantly Black neighborhood? Have you ever seen a predominantly Black neighborhood in your life? Anybody?
Yes.
Tell me some of the businesses that you'll see in some of those communities on average. What are some of the businesses that you sometimes see in those communities?
Convenience stores.
Archie.
You might have.
Good. What else?
You might have liquor stores too there.
Good. Do y'all think that's an accident?
No.
Wig stores.
Say it again, Soraya.
Hair stores.
Good.
More likely wig stores.
Absolutely. So the people, before they move these businesses into these communities, Soraya, they have researched those communities thoroughly. So it's not an accident that in the hood, you don't see as many IKEAs. You don't see as many Apple stores. You may see a Popeyes, but you're less likely to see like a Panera or Chipotle. Y'all don't believe that's an accident, do you?
No.
People, again, in business and people in power have researched human behavior a great deal. So they know all top, even when we'll wonder sometimes, man, it's a McDonald's right there. Why do they put this Wendy's right across the street? There's a Dollar General right here. Why do they put this other competing dollar store right across the street? Because they have done enough research to find that, you know what? We can make a lot of money here. There's something as simple as, people may not want to make that right turn to go to McDonald's. So let's put it a restaurant right here where they don't have to do all that. So much of human behavior is research. And it's really important as young Black people to understand that a lot of research and data is collected on you. to understand your behavior. Because if I can understand your behavior, Soraya, I can potentially manipulate or capitalize off your behavior. This is one of the important things about social research is that if you can understand your behavior, there's a lot of power in that. So keep this in mind. And again, all right, so like if anybody in human service in here, anybody looking to go into human services?
I am.
So in human services, right, you want to research, if you wanted to start your own agency, where do people need mental health? Where's there a lack of mental health access, and where can you provide it at? So if that's something that you want to get into, Jasmine, you would need to research. Like, again, you will lose a lot of money if you just, let me just set up a business right here because this is where I want to do it at. No. You have to look at all types of data and information. And we're going to talk about how you collect that information in this chapter and others. So we talked about how you can utilize this in health and human services. We can do this when it relates to business, communication platforms such as journalism and broadcasting, academia such as sociology, political science, and then in criminal justice. So for example, is anyone aware of how, like, I'm not sure if this is still true, but I know it's been true historically in this country. How do we decide how many penitentiaries to build in this in a given state? Do you all know that? What do they use to determine how many penitentiaries they want to build for? So this is 2020. If we wanted to see how many prisons and prison cells that we need to have available in 2030 and 2035, do you think they're going to start building those prisons in 2030? Do you think they're going to start building those prisons in 2030?
No, sir.
They were not. So what do you think that they will use to determine how many prisons they need to build? Do your own research on this, but typically what's being used has been fourth grade reading scores in the state. They look at a state's fourth grade reading scores. Why do you think something like that might correlate with the number of prisons that need to be built? Fourth grade reading scores. Why do you think that they will look at something like that to determine something, years and years far off? And again, don't worry about whether or not you get the right or wrong answer. I'm just interested in your thought process. So Maya Bowers, why do you think that they use fourth grade reading scores to determine how many prisons to build in the state?
Cause like probably seeing them growing up as a kid, like they can see like their background and stuff like already like aspiring or whatever. So
excellent, Maya. Very good. This may not be fair, but in fourth grade, they are already making predictions about human behavior. And if your fourth grade reading scores are poor, you're probably going to get a little bit behind in school, and you're probably less likely to do well in school through junior high, high school, and on to college. If you don't have access to education these days, does it guarantee that you're going to turn to crime? Of course not. I know many people who stopped out after high school and made very good lives for themselves. But in the late 20th century and 21st century, education is very strongly tied to like economic mobility. So if you don't have access to quality education, oftentimes you're at a huge disadvantage, and this will oftentimes lead to you making more deviant choices. And we'll talk about that in great detail. But again, the main thing I want you to use to understand here is that we research things about human behavior to make predictions for the future. So for example, right, one of the things that we want to learn, one of the things that sociologists look at in social research, and let me be clear, right? So in me skipping through all this stuff, this does not mean that this isn't important. This is all covered in your textbook, but in the interest of time, I am not going to cover every single topic on this PowerPoint. Again, I'm not going to cover every single topic on this PowerPoint. This is important, Maisha, because a lot of times students will take my class and believe that so long as they copy down the PowerPoint, that they'll get a good grade in the class. Nothing could be further from the truth. What do you think is the key to getting a good grade in this class? It's not just looking at these PowerPoints. What do you think is the key?
Reading the text.
Absolutely.
And learn it.
Without reading the text, these PowerPoints are not going to make a whole bunch of sense. So please keep that in mind. Now, Soraya, semester after semester after semester, people ignore me when I tell them this. I hope you can learn from past sins. So what we try and do in social sciences is look at group behavior. So we see, for example, right, that there are income and gender disparities all across the world. Can anybody, well, it might be difficult for y'all to see, so I'll read it for you. In higher income countries, the rate of male suicide is 3 times that of women. In the United States, the rate of male success is almost 4 times that of women. In low and middle income countries, the rate of male suicide is 1.5 times that of women. The author is giving you some data here. What do you think, what conclusions do you think they're trying to make here? In looking at the rate of success of American males and the rate of suicide compared to other countries. What do you think the point that the author is trying to make by giving us this data? And again, don't worry about if you're right or wrong. Go ahead, Jasmine.
They're trying to like give you like some stats and statistics is what it's called. Yeah.
Absolutely. And statistics is something that you want to pay very keen attention to. But what do you think? And again, this is not an easy question I'm asking y'all, so do not stress if you can't get it all the way down. Like I said, I just want to get into the habit of thinking about these kind of questions. So when they're telling you about the rate of success of men in America and then the rate of suicide, and they tell you about the rate of success between men and women in other countries and their rate of suicide, what do you think the author is trying to draw your attention to? Because one of the things that you'll be an expert in, Jasmine, by the time you're a senior, is being able to look at numbers like this and tell a bigger story with these numbers. So what do you think is the story the author is trying to tell us here? That male suicide is 3 times that of women. The rate of male suicides is almost 4 times that of women in America.
Is it like saying like it don't matter if you're a male or female, it's the rates are still gonna be higher or low?
No, it seems to indicate that being a man actually does make a difference. Why do I say that?
Because of like it's a kind of like a myth going around that females, because we're so emotional and we show our emotions more than men, that we will be more inclined to suicide because of how our emotions fluctuate.
That's true. But with this data here, right, that is absolutely true, that there is that perception. And this data shows that that's not true. People will tell you a lot of times, well, women are just more emotional than men. Everybody knows that. But this data here, this is a factual data set, doesn't really support that. But what it's also suggesting is that it's not just men that commit more suicide. It's something about American men, because men across the world commit suicide at a higher rate. But it says here, right, the rate of male suicide is 1.5 times that of women in lower and middle income countries. But here in the richest country in the world, the male to female gap is much higher. Why do you all think that is? Why do you think it's so different in America compared to other countries? Again, don't worry about if the answer is right or wrong. But why do you think the gap is so high in America compared to other countries? What's different about America?
In America, compared to other structures, we have different like norms. Like in America, we use credit score. So if you don't have a high enough credit score, a good enough credit score, you can't really buy like a house that you want. In other countries, if you just have the money, you can buy whatever you want.
Okay, but how does that explain the rate of suicide? So you're saying that the reason why that men commit suicide more in America is because of their credit scores?
No. Okay, what I was saying was it's more of a pressure here in America to get what you want than in other countries.
There we go. Excellent, 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 excellent. And again, it takes some time sometimes. That is the point that he's making. Very good. Who is that, Maisha?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. And please look, a lot of times, Maisha, there's a tendency to only want to take notes on what you see on the PowerPoint or what the professor says. Please take notes on what your classmates say as well. They're giving you a lot of good information here. So you're absolutely right, Maisha. What this first data set is saying is that there's more, not only more pressure in our society, there's more pressure on men specifically. That in many ways, your whole view of manhood is really related to how much money you have. But it also says that even if you got a lot of money, it does not buy you a lot of happiness in America. Because you would think like, man, these people got all this money, they living well. Why wouldn't they be satisfied? But it says that, like, you know, maybe they're even with all this wealth that, you know, is the envy of the world in many ways, that there's a lot to be desired in American society because money is not really buying us a lot of happiness. Keep this in mind. Very good discussion. And again, if there are things that you missed there, this is recorded and we can go over some of these things again in the future. In many nations, the highest rate of suicide is that of persons aged 70 and over. In the United States, the highest rate of suicide is that of middle-aged persons, particularly white men. So again, like, you know, in other countries, Maisha, when people get older, perhaps if they're dealing with some health issues, you know, like, you know what, I'm just going to end it all. In our country, it's mainly middle-aged people that are in the heart of their lives that are committing suicide. Jasmine, we don't believe that these things happen for no reason. So in science, take notes. Here's one word I want you to write down, okay? Everybody got a pen and paper? Here's the word I want you to write down. Why? The question, why? Because we don't believe that things just happen for no reason. We believe that, again, that there's some purpose for everything, and we can explain it. Sometimes it may take a little bit more time than others, but we believe we can explain why upper class black males, white males who are middle-aged commit suicide at such higher rates than people throughout the planet. A couple more points. And again, none of this is going to be testable. This is just giving you some thought exercises so that when we do get to the testable information, Janiyah, that'll make a lot more sense. Consider this, young people. As the Industrial Revolution began to sweep the United States in the beginning of the 19th century, children being employed in factories became increasingly common. Soon, social thinkers began to explore such new social problems brought about by industrialization. So what this speaks to here, right? Industrialization speaks to how we produce our goods. So here, right, where you see, like, you know, Jasmine, you would see people like in working in factories like this, making things by hand. So almost all the goods and services were produced this way. We don't really do this as much anymore. We'll talk about that later on. But as a result of this, Sarai, as a result of industrialization, it was believed that our society changed in many important ways. Let's look at industrialization a little bit more closely. And I'll give you all a chance to take notes on this. Please write this down. Soraya, don't only write it down word for word. Write it down in such a way that ensures that you fully understand what you're writing down, okay?
Yes, sir.
Industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization and urbanization. All right, so dig in here, Maisha. Before industrialization, American economy was like governed by farming, by agriculture. So before the 1870s, the vast majority of people farmed for a living. That was their job. How do you think the kind of jobs that people do, what are some other ways would that affect their lives? think again, as many aspects of your life as possible. How does the kind of work that people do impact their lives? In as many ways as you can possibly think of. Maya Bowers, how does the kind of work that people do impact how they live their lives?
Sometimes, say like if a construction, like a man that's a construction worker, he come home from a long tired day, frustrated, so he can take it like his anger out on his family or whatever, and it's impacting like his family life or whatever.
Okay, good, Maya. That's one of the more important ones. The kind of work you do can impact your family life, how you interact within the home. Excellent. What else? Anybody else? What are some other ways that, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit, Maya. Very good point. What are some other ways that the kind of work you do can impact various aspects of your life? Anybody? Come on, y'all. How does the kind of work you do impact your life? John, you may need to unmute yourself. How does the kind of work you do impact how you go about living your life? Does it? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Would that like determine like the type of jobs you'll get, or what type of person you are?
It could, but tell me how. And what we're talking about is the kind of job you have. Y'all better be thinking about this. A large part of y'all being here is so you can have a full opportunity within the job market. So these are questions you need to be thinking about anyway. Do you think it impacts how many children you might have?
Yes, because like if you have a very busy job that requires a lot of your time, you might not want to have children because you won't be able to spend time with those people. I mean, your kids. And like depending on the type of job you take, like if you're somebody who works with computers, normally like they're very neat people because every little detail counts.
Good. Do you think it affects like how often people like vote and go to church?
Yes, because it goes right back to the time. If you are so consumed with your job, you might like, well, I just missed the voting, or I don't go to church because either I have to work or that's my only day to sleep from work.
Good. Do you think it impacts where people live?
Yes.
What kind of schools they can give, what kind of future they can give their children?
Yes.
Do you think it impacts like whether or not you whether or not your deviant acts put you in prison?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the kind of work you do affects your life in so many ways personally. So it does the same thing for society. So as we moved into industrialization, where more and more people stopped farming, Soraya, so before you had more and more people farming, then you had more and more people working in factories. Where were those factories usually placed at? If you wanted to work in a factory in the early 1900s or even now, where would you usually have to go? So let's talk about South Carolina specifically. If it was 1930 or 1950 and you wanted to work in a factory, where do you think most of them were going to be at? What places would you have to go? Be very specific. You probably would have to go to a city. And this is where we go into, Soraya, urbanization. This is the process by which an increasing proportion of a population lives in cities rather than in rural areas. So keep in mind, right, what I said before. In the 1800s, in the early 1800s, most people farmed. Over time, more and more people had to go and work in factories to make their living. And most of those factories were going to be in big cities. So this is how Columbia and Charleston and Atlanta and Chicago and New York and Cleveland and Detroit, all these places became populated. People weren't going to Detroit because of the good weather. Why did so many people move to Detroit? I'm sure many of your family members probably moved up to places like that, right? Why?
More opportunity,
Be more specific. What kind of opportunities?
more work opportunity.
Absolutely. My family's originally from Alabama. They journeyed up to Chicago during the Great Migration because there were some political considerations as well, which we'll talk about. But the main thing more than anything else is there were more work opportunities. That you could go up to a place like Cleveland, you can go to a place like Philadelphia, not have a bunch of education, and you can find a really well-paying job. So those urban populations really grew between 1870 and 1960. Do you think that moving to these new environments changed the people's ideas, their behavior, and how they saw the world? Hello?
Yes.
Absolutely. Why do you say so, Sarai? Why do you think it would change how they approach the world? Moving from a rural environment to New York City or Washington, D.C. or New Orleans. How do you think that would affect people and their behavior and how they approach the world?
Because it's a completely different environment, and moving into a completely different environment from what you're used to, it could be pretty life-changing because you would probably feel like you have to adjust.
Absolutely.
And change the way you see things. It's a different perspective.
Absolutely. Now, what are some specific ways that living in a city can impact your life? Has anybody ever had a situation where maybe they lived in a rural area and then maybe it moved to a big city? What are some things that you have to consider?
People dress differently in the city than in rural areas.
Good. What else? Anybody?
It's like a faster pace in the cities than the rural areas.
Absolutely. So keep this in mind as we go forward. I need y'all to do me a quick favor, okay? We're going to get bumped out of this lecture in a moment. I'm going to resume on the other side. I'll just be a couple of minutes, but I want to get through a little bit more of the lecture today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log you out here. You can use the same link and same code and enter back into the class in a couple of moments. So log out and then come on right back in, okay? Y'all hear me?
Okay.